And now the nice thing is, because you can't imagine how happy I am, because I have a room full of paleontologists, earth scientists, people who like to think about deep time, people who spend, I know many, if not all of you, every free minute that they have to extend the fossil record. I've never seen the cabinets in the hallway look as beautiful as they do right now. You can also walk to the birthplace of Eugene Guar. And once again, I have to plug it. I work in dodos. I feel somewhat better in showing this to you because at least I'm in the right age bracket now. Let's do things together, right? Starting today. And that is enough of a sales pitch on the why Maastricht is so tremendously interesting.
Hi everyone, I'm delighted to be with you, albeit virtually, and I just wanted to start by wishing the WPZ many congratulations on your 40th anniversary. I have actually been a member for 35 of those 40 years, so although I'm not a founder member like some of you, I might perhaps be the oldest serving member outside of the Netherlands, and I'm very proud of that. I'm going to talk about the fossils that Darwin collected on the Beagle voyage in South America, and hope to persuade you that these were actually an important trigger to his thinking about evolution. You have to remember Darwin, when he set off on this voyage, he was a nobody. I mean, he was just a student. Nobody had heard of him. By the time he got back to England 5 years later, everybody had heard of him. I mentioned that Owen had cut sections off of that large skull fragment, and nobody knew what happened to the pieces that he cut off. We assumed they got lost. When I was doing my research on the Darwin collection, I was at Down House one day, which is, of course, is Darwin's home. The curator said to me, I found something that might be of interest to you, because she knew I was interested in the fossils. And she took me into a room, and sitting on the table was this object that you see at the bottom left on the screen. And I nearly fell over, because I could see immediately that it was the counterpart of that skull. We think it's quite normal that you would find South American fossils in South America. It's because we're seeing the world through Darwin's eyes. At that time it wasn't obvious. And he writes, according to my view, in South America, parent of all armadillos might be brother to Megatherium. And I have actually playfully put those drawings against his tree. Of course, he didn't do that, because I think that when he was drawing that famous tree, that is what he had in his mind. It was those fossil mammals.
Happy 40th anniversary. Thank you very much. I've actually had the pleasure of speaking to you a number of years ago, and so it's great to be back. So here we have in North America, we have these animals from Eurasia, these animals from South America, and coming in and enriching the North American Pleistocene fauna. And so the timing and chronology is very important in terms of saying, gee, after this new herbivore comes in, does another one in North America that's endemic go extinct? And was there ecological competition between them? And so now we get to the question of what was the ecology of these extinct animals? Horses, camels, peccaries, our North American porcupine, Smilodon, sloths, the glyptodons, cervids, other cervids such as rangifer, what we call our American mastodon, muskox, bison, the North American antelope, our short-faced bear, the giant beaver. North America gets ground sloths, but South America gets mammoths. Actually, I think North America got the better part of the deal, but I'm slightly biased. Summing this up, we've got a really neat story here. And thanks to the Beringian Museum, and these are reproduced in the issue of Cranium, we can see faunas where we have these mixtures of animals that originate from different continents. They're telling us a story, and so when you look at these reconstructions, just step back and say, what's it telling us about their physiology, about their ecology, about where they came from, about how they adapted to being there? Did they evolve there? Are they dispersing in?
En wat voor tijd moet je dan denken?
Maand of 6, maand 6, 7 zeker. En het maakt ook niet uit bijvoorbeeld of we een hele kleine Lucy of een kleine Australopithecus moeten maken of een hele grote, dat maakt niet uit, want de onderzoeksbijt, dat maakt niet uit, kracht doen we ook net zo lang over. Alleen ja, soms is het heel simpel, bij die Lucy moet er veel meer haar in genaaid worden uiteindelijk. Dus er zijn maanden haar in naaien, dus dat kost ook heel veel tijd.
Ik snap niet meer even af. Ja. Dat is een karakter.
Adrie, jij wil nog iets laten zien? Ja.
Nou nee, het gaat over karakters. Ik bedoel van, kijk, dit is een Lucy, maar die wil een beetje een vrolijk karakter geven, maar dit is best wel lang over gedaan om dit karakter te krijgen. De volgende van? Ja, dit ook, deze weekendje. Ja, weekendje. Deze, ja, kijk, om een leuk karakter te krijgen dat je aanspreekt, dat kan soms lang duren.
Ja. Want ik denk dat iedereen dat gelijk herkent. Beelden van jullie herken ik direct. En ze zijn natuurlijk hartstikke realistisch. Je hebt het idee dat ze zo weg kunnen lopen.
Ja, maar wij streven niet. Ik wil zeggen, wij zijn niet de perfectionisten, strevers naar realistisch. Wij zijn zelf zijn niet. Maar impressionistisch, wel meer impressionistisch. Maar iedereen, ik wil zoveel als mensen dan. Kijk, wij worden gevraagd voor superrealistische beelden. En mensen komen dan in het museum en dan is het heel dichtbij kijken van, oh, die pakt er hartstikke goed uit. Vind ik een beetje onzin eigenlijk. Het gaat om de eerste effect van als iemand binnenkomt en je ontmoet iemand en de expressie die er heeft, is het belangrijkste. Iemand kan bijken hartstikke perfect zijn, maar het kan een saai iets zijn.
Ja.
This is the very first fossil sloth ever found. This was the first fossil mammal to be given a Linnaean binomial name. It is named Megatherium americanum, or the great beast of the Americas. This was the first fossil mammal mounted as a three-dimensional skeleton. Before that, they were laid out flat. So, sloths may be slow, but they're the first of a lot of things. And Megatherium sort of started this. So it's very interesting that you see ecological differences in the habitats these animals use, from cold, temperate, high elevation to tropical, low latitude, warm tropical environment, forested areas. Why do tree sloths live in the tropics and still have lots of hair? Because sloths have a slow metabolism. Their foot anatomy is the weirdest. Because their hind foot, they're walking on the side of their hind foot. So the foot is rotated, and so here you have the heel, the metatarsal, the toe bone, and that's what the fleshy pad is making that sort of kidney bean shaped moccasin foot imprint. When we look at these animals, we start seeing some very interesting features. As I mentioned, there's no enamel on the teeth. They don't get any milk teeth. They get one set of teeth. They're open-rooted. They grow throughout the life of the animal. And you can see how the way they wear, they make nice little cutting edges for slicing up the vegetation. And if you know anything about plants that live in deserts, they don't taste very good. Creosote, Mormon tea, saltbush, yucca, these have chemicals that are to prevent animals from eating them. Sloths don't care. It's green, they eat it.
For the past 2.5 years, a major construction has occurred to the north of Mexico City, nearby the small town of Santa Lucia. Enormous areas were dug and a large amount of Pleistocene fossil bones was uncovered.
Certainly, I would like to start with mentioning that there's some, the term biodiversity is very well known presently, but for the Pleistocene land, it was increased because of the last glacial maximum in Mexico. We have these three groups of proboscideans, mammoths in the new American mastodon, mammoth americanum, and we have golf otters. Santa Lucia, where the new Mexican airport, Mexico City airport is located now. Actually, as you can see, is right where the lake used to be. It was on the coast of the lake. We started finding a lot of mammoth bones, but we never figured there were so many isolated animals probably getting stuck on the bottom of the lake and dying there. So in this case, we have several animals, including the initial animals that were, and we have other animals. So we are still trying to answer this question.
It does mean that we can have people from Mexico and the United States and many other places in the room.
Good to see you all. It's early in the morning here. Well, that was it.
Yeah, it's loading now.
The Black Hills, for those of you who are not quite sure where it's at, okay, here we are in the United States, and here are the Black Hills. Here we are in South Dakota. Here's the most recent glacial advancement. And so we're kind of close, but we were never glaciated. We're not east, we're not west. This is the mountainous country. This is the Rocky Mountains. This is where, you can go up in elevation. So really the Black Hills are kind of an island, if you will, an ecotone, if you will, geographic. So the Black Hills basically were pushed up, and as it came up, it's eroding in the middle to get the core complex to show. And then you have all these, the edge all the way around it is this limestone. So I went up there in July of 1974 and said, yeah, there could be 4, maybe 5 mammoths. And you dig down and go, oh, here's a mammoth. And pick it up, check it out, and go, well, there's another one down there. So we take that out and go, well, there's another one. As we dig down, it got bigger and bigger. We're going, this is going to be a problem, I think. What are we going to do? We think we probably have enough tusks to say that we have at least 60 mammoths. Larry and I worked on this for a number of years. This is really his legacy. Now, for a long time, we thought, well, maybe the elephants just kind of went bloop, and then he got in and then died and filled in with these sediments. It's not a slide in kind of the way we're seeing here. You can, this one's saying, hey, help me get out. This one's saying, Bob, why are you in there? What caused you to do that? We know they can swim, so they dive in, so to speak, swim around. As you come up to this edge, it's kind of like, well, okay, I'll just put my big, 1-ton foot up here, and it's sliding in. So effectively, they can't get back out. So they're going to swim around this and then unfortunately drown. Well, fortunately for us, they're going to sink to the bottom and become part of the deposit. I thought, well, why do any more radiocarbon dating? The bone is heavily leached. There's no real organic. There's no collagen. Don't do radiocarbon. So we do optically stimulated luminescence, OSL. We think it's glacial phase, MIS6. That means that the mammoth site is cool and it's a lot of fun and we can do a lot with it, but it's a snapshot in time. Thank you, folks.
You've all been voted! Yay!
This is what was left of Sasha. First ever baby woolly rhino discovered in Yakutia. The fact that we find fruit bodies from inside the molar folds of this woolly rhino, that tells us that they consumed feces on which fruit bodies had already been formed. And this is hair of the Yakov mammoth. And when we washed it, we found seeds and fruits and pollen grains that had been preserved. So the spores of Sporormiella are everywhere, but the fruit bodies only grow on the surface of dung. So again, coprophagy. That's a phenomenon that we see every time. After more than 100 years, we got the opportunity to study the botanical remains from inside these feces. Lumps of pollen tells us that unripe pollen of flowering plants had been consumed. We have seen that also with mammoth material. Here you get an impression about these plants that were important in southern South America during the last ice age when this Mylodon was living there. I thank you for your attention.
So a few of the rodents of unusual size from the Ice Age, or rogues, gathering here. We have, of course, the true giant beaver. I realize that's a very contentious thing to say with this crowd, and I might be mocked. This is either the best or the worst size comparison chart in the history of Pleistocene research, saying it's about the same size as a small black bear. So giant beavers were very successful. The first records show up, they're an exclusively North American species, but the first records show up about 900,000 years ago. So we wanted to approach the giant beaver ecology by asking what did they eat and compare them to the modern beaver and see if they were similar or not. And we went about finding out what the giant beaver ate by using stable isotopes. So what we do see is that the giant beaver was eating a lot of aquatic plants. We found a very, very strong correlation between the isotopic signal of the submerged aquatic plants and the giant beaver. So spoiler alert, the giant beaver is not cutting down trees for food and is probably not creating gigantic dams on the Ice Age landscape, which is maybe not what we were hoping for. And there's very strong correlation, as you would expect, between giant beaver populations existing when there's interstadial conditions, when it's warmer and it's wetter, and we have this wetland habitat surrounded by mixed open conifer forest, which also seems to be a preferred habitat of mastodon as well. They often overlap. And then the other thing that's happening is Pleistocene and castor did coexist in North America during the Pleistocene, eating different foods, but maybe competing for habitat space. There are multiple species in there that practice woodcutting behavior and built lodges and dams and were ecosystem engineers. But those traits were actually lost in the giant beaver and Castorides, and that probably contributed to its extinction, its inability to modify the ecosystem.
In Nederland hebben we een reuzen Rob van Berg. En die kennen jullie natuurlijk allemaal als WPZ-voorzitter. Maar ik ken hem eigenlijk beter als geoloog die in de jaren 80 in Utrecht studeerde. En met hem ben ik dus ook op veldwerk geweest.
Well, it all started with tegelen. And the one who was quite famous, who made it famous, is Eugène Dubois. And he had a student, Antje Schreuder. She described the large amounts of Trogontherium and also castor, the European beaver that were found over there. This was the start of the new species. Probably it was called giant beaver because we see that the skull parts that were found at Tegelen and the teeth are bigger than castor. So if that is bigger, the whole animal is probably bigger. But it's not. We see the giant beaver, Castor oidii. So we see that the giant beaver is more related to Trogontherium than to castor. We started a working group. Then we asked all the collectors, all of you, to come to us. What we were going to investigate was, does Trogontherium get bigger? Or is it just variation between the species over the time period that we find it? And what was of a great help was the thesis of Antje Schreuder. Most bones have characteristics that you can distinguish them. Yeah, what was the shape of Trogontherium? How did it look? I found a very old reconstruction, beaverish but not quite. I've also found these two. This one from a Russian source, There's an X-ray of a beaver tail. You see the relation between the butterflies on the vertebrae compared to the flat tail. And these butterfly structures are not present at Trogontherium. So that's why we presume that it's more a rat-like tail. Remy Bakker, who created this one, with the giant hind feet with the flippers in it. Huge head. And of course, it was contemporary with Castor, so they would have met this afternoon. Something will be happening.
Hij is een bioloog in hart en nieren en botten en kiezen, zou ik willen toevoegen.
The thing is, we've heard it a lot, Trogontherium was big. But then also Trogontherium wasn't really bigger than Castor. So we want to quantify it by taking measurements. You see that not only is the Trogontherium incisor larger in absolute terms, it's just bigger, but also relative to its own jaw, distal fragments of the tibia from Trogontherium. It's a very, very common bone, both in the Maastricht and in Tegen. For some reason, it's almost always broken, but the distal part preserves very well. That's basically all about taking these measurements, and that results then in measurements. Ta-da! This is our data. So what we did is we took every single measurement of every single bone 3 times. So our results, we inventoried 28 private collections, and we concluded that they contain at least 1,000 specimens. Cranial and post-cranial elements were both recovered very abundantly. We had 297 bones and 171 dental elements. So what we found is that the tibia, diastasis and trochanterium from Maastricht 2 are significantly larger than those from Tegen. We see that in all cases the average, so the big black line within the colored box, is higher. And it shows that there is more variation. So you can really see that there is a difference between the Maastricht 2 specimens and the Tegen specimens. Of course, I told you this is all preliminary. We're still thinking about our future research.
What we also don't know is why Trogontherium got extinct, of course, and Castor not. Probably something to do with climate. We think that Trogontherium is maybe more specialized than Castor, and of course, when things change, that the specialists got extinct earlier than the generalists.
What is the reason why it became bigger? Have you any idea about it?
Well, we didn't actually think about it in that sense. There is this trend, and we try to say, okay, we accept this as a fact, and we try to use this to interpret the data from Maastricht 2.
We should vote on a different name. You don't have to explain every time that giant beaver is not a giant beaver. It's smaller than you expect, but then it's bigger than whatever. There's a hard translation, but what's rustling through the shrubbery? And that's always a very interesting question in this case. We all seen this one several times. And that means that this illustration is bloody good, or it's just about the only one you have. Trogontherium is huge head, and then a little body, and then a huge ass, and then a round tail, and the beaver is just moderate head, small front, and then a huge butt, and then a flat tail. When I got the information from the measuring of the vertebra, if you calculate it out, you can get to a body length of roughly 115 centimeters. From literature, we can say that the front feet were roughly 20% smaller and the hind feet roughly 20% bigger. And that gets weirder because the head is really big compared to the body with the huge incisors. Preferably, if you want to make a model of an animal or an illustration, you want to show typical traits of that specific animal. That's why we, from the beginning, chose the swimming posture. Some animals live in their skin. It's like the skin is firmly touched the head, to the legs and to the hind legs, but the rest is one big bag and everything is moving in it. I started to make a work scope from foam, and then you do basically a facial reconstruction. The front feet are quite small, and the hind feet, you can see that the flanges are really flat and wide. But like with the duck, you can see the duck swimming. When it goes to the back, you see it going nice and open to get a lot of resistance. And the front feet, they fold and they go forward. And it's just that. Some parts, especially around the nose, have to be glued by hand. So what you do is you clip off the hairs, you dab it in a little bit of glue, and then stick it on. And it's great glue because sometimes it just sticks to your hand. You can't release it. It's very frustrating. It's not an absolute. It can change tomorrow. If something is found,
can be changed, then maybe they have to be changed.
Anyways, I was just asking, like, are you now really interested in? I was wondering what it looks like. Is that what you wonder about? Is this like after 2 days? First of all, I would say congratulations to 40th anniversary. And the relevant question of these 2 days is, you know, what can we learn from this big period of our history that we can use today?
So we asked for names, and we got many nice names. For example, some made me laugh, like Justin Beaver. Pollux, Castor, Ferry, like Trogontherium cuvieri. Trogier, but the winner is beaver.
But I guess there is also two like almost mythical figures here. They're called Ed and Willem Beaver. I have no clue where they are. They're inside. And they tell me that you're all making selfies with these two?
Yeah.
If I look back at these 40 years, I think the success of WPZ was first of all that they adapt to the changes.
Hij is ook echt zo gaaf. Ja. Ik wist het natuurlijk wel, maar dan nog.
Okay, so it's really fun to walk on the beach and to find fossils, and I think you all do that, even at night, when the tides are right, with the headlight.